All right, let's jump right in. Ever get that feeling that a really great story, a powerful song, or even a crazy dream you had are all somehow connected? Like they share a hidden blueprint? Well, today we're going to explore a pretty wild idea that maybe all of human creation, everything from a single sentence to an entire symphony, follows one single universal shape. I know, it's a huge question, right? On the surface, they seem like totally different things. But what if they're not? What if they're all just different flavors of the exact same fundamental pattern? You know, that arc of tension and release that's literally hardwired into our brains? Okay, so let's kick things off with the most familiar version of this pattern, the story. We've all felt its pull, that need to know what happens next. But you might be surprised by just how deep this pattern really goes. Now, this 5-step arc, it's not some modern invention. We're talking Aristotle and the ancient Greeks, all the way up to today's Hollywood blockbusters. It's like the skeleton key for storytelling. And the reason it works, the reason it feels so satisfying, is because it mirrors how we actually experience life. There's a beginning, a struggle, a peak moment, and then the aftermath.
And here is where things get really mind-bending, because this arc isn't just for stories. The theory we're digging into today argues that this exact same shape, this simple rise and fall of tension, is the fundamental building block for pretty much everything we create, and maybe even how we think.
So why? Why is this one pattern so universal? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The hypothesis we're exploring suggests the answer isn't in our culture, it's in our cortex. The blueprint isn't on the page, it's inside our heads. This is the core idea, and it's called the Brain Kinematics Model. What it suggests is that the story arc isn't just a useful metaphor. It's a description of a real physical thing happening in your brain, a literal wave of energy, or what they call strain, flowing in a very specific pattern. So, where does this thought wave begin its journey? It starts right here, in the parietal cortex. You can think of this part of your brain as the stage manager. Its job is to set the scene. It establishes the what and the where. It gives us the object, the noun in our brain's sentence. Okay, once the scene is set, that wave of energy flows onward to the temporal cortex. And this is the engine room. This is where things start to happen. It introduces motion, action, the verb. This is where the conflict gets generated and that feeling of tension starts to build. And finally, for the grand finale, the wave reaches the prefrontal cortex. This is the director's chair. This is the who, the subject that makes decisions, drives the story to its climax, and ultimately gives it all meaning. This is the part of your brain that asks, so what? And provides the answer. Now here's the really crucial part. This isn't a one-way street. The brain runs this loop from object to action to subject over and over and over again. Each pass refines the thought, adds more detail, and builds the story until it feels complete. It's literally like a writer doing multiple drafts, but it's all happening at the speed of thought. And get this, the model goes so deep, it even has a place for grammar. Adjectives, they basically amplify the object signal coming from the parietal cortex. Adverbs, they turn up the volume on the action from the temporal cortex. Our own language seems to be a toolkit for fine-tuning this neural arc. Okay, so we've got this physical arc, this wave inside our brains. But what does it actually look like? Well, brace yourselves for a pretty fascinating leap, because the next step in this theory is to describe these brain shapes using the pure language of mathematics. So, let's start with the most basic form. The simplest arc you can have is just a parabola. One clean hill. This is a single sentence. It's a short fable, it's a joke with one setup and one punchline. A single rise, a single peak, and a single resolution. Simple. But what happens when that arc repeats itself? Well, then you get a sine wave. Think about the rhythm in a poem or a catchy musical phrase that repeats. It's that same rise and fall, just happening over and over in a really satisfying cyclical pattern. All right, let's level up the complexity. In physics, there's something called a wave packet. It's just a concentrated burst of energy. In the world of art and thought, this is like a single self-contained scene in a movie, or maybe one of those vivid, fleeting episodes you have in a dream. It's a little pocket of story moving through time. Now this is where it gets really fun. Superposition. That's just a fancy word for when multiple waves overlap and interact with each other. This is the math behind a massive, sprawling novel with tons of characters.
All their individual story arcs, their parabolas and sine waves, are weaving in and out, sometimes boosting each other, sometimes crashing into each other. And finally, at the peak of complexity, you have something like Schrödinger's equation. Now, don't worry about the physics, just think of the idea. It describes the evolution of a whole system of possibilities. This is a full symphony with dozens of musical ideas interacting at once. Or even bigger, it's a human life, where you have countless potential paths in front of you until a choice, a decision, collapses all that probability into one single reality. It's the ultimate arc.
Of course, you're probably thinking, hang on, real life and real art are way messier than that. And you're absolutely right. That simple one-hill arc is just the starting point. So, how does the theory account for all the beautiful complexity we see in the world?
Well, that basic arc can twist itself into all kinds of incredible shapes. It can be cyclic, repeating themes like in a musical sonata. It can spiral, returning to an idea but with a deeper level of understanding each time. It can even be fractal, where you have tiny little arcs inside bigger arcs that all mirror each other, like in stream of consciousness writing. Or it can just be chaotic and unstable, never finding a resolution, like free jazz improvisation.
So how on earth does the brain pull off all this complexity? The model says it all comes down to just two basic moves. The first one is called substitution. Think of this as the brain's ability to go vertical, to swap information between different layers, digging deeper and deeper. This is how we get recursion and depth and those amazing fractal patterns.
The second basic move is transferring. And if substitution is vertical, this one's horizontal. It's the function that moves those little packets of thought across the brain. This is what creates forward momentum, that feeling of flow, the continuous thread that holds a story together. And with just those two simple functions, the brain can build any creative structure imaginable.
So let's just zoom out for a second. We've got this one shape, rooted in the physics of our brains, describable by mathematics, that seems to pop up everywhere in human creativity. I mean, that's a powerful, powerful idea. But we also have to ask ourselves, is it maybe a little too simple?
And it's really important to be clear about this. This is a hypothesis, not a proven fact. The brain mapping we talked about, it's a useful simplification. We can't actually stick a probe in someone's head and measure this neural strain, not yet anyway. Plus, not every culture tells stories in a neat linear arc. And there are other competing scientific models out there that can also explain these feelings of tension and release.
But even with all those caveats, it leaves us with a truly mind-blowing question to chew on. Could it be that every poem, every painting, every building, every story we've ever told is just a different solution to the same fundamental equation of the mind? A physical arc unfolding inside our own brains, giving shape to what it means to be human. It's an incredible thought.